Right now on the National Weather Desk, Ernesto gets stronger as the hurricane eyes Bermuda. The East Coast braces for deadly rip currents.
I think we're going to have a high rip current risk today, tomorrow, and Sunday.
Storms and flooding create a waterfall inside a Utah home.
Way bigger than I ever imagined it to be.
Why some of the areas that flooded the most during Tropical Storm Debbie were not actually in flood zones.
Flood maps don't capture small waterway flooding.
A rare sea creature is found on the California coast.
It's probably what is responsible for historic sea serpent myths.
And how a crew survived after their boat caught fire 100 miles out to sea.
It wouldn't have been a happy story like it is right now. No way. No way.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Hurricane Ernesto has grown into a Category 2 storm with top sustained winds of 100 miles per hour. The hurricane remains, though, on course to strike the island of Bermuda overnight. The last time Bermuda was struck by a hurricane was Paulette 4 years ago. Ernesto was just a tropical storm when it battered Puerto Rico. Across the island, many communities remain underwater following up to 10 inches of rain. Nearly 250,000 homes and businesses are still without power this morning. Now that's down from a peak of 750,000. FEMA has already been authorized to help with storm recovery. While Ernesto won't threaten the mainland U.S. directly, beaches along the East Coast will feel its impact. Red flags will be flying to warn swimmers of life-threatening rip currents from Florida all the way to Maine. Waves at some beaches could be 8 to 10 feet tall, so anyone thinking about heading into the water needs to be extra careful as well. South Carolina meteorologist Alex Cordero is tracking Ernesto for us this morning.
Now, Hurricane Ernesto, this large circulation is pushing toward Bermuda. Thankfully, it's not a direct threat to us. Sadly, it is a direct threat for that island. Looking at a hurricane warning in place with conditions deteriorating today. A landfall expected tonight, if not into tomorrow morning. Then the system will start to weaken a bit. But here's the thing. Category 1, approaching eastern maritime Canada, that's a big deal for them. They've had some very impactful storms in recent memory. This is going to be more of a storm for them and then push into the Arctic. For our neck of the woods, how does it impact us, though? Mainly in the form of bumpy weather along the shore. I think we're going to have a high rip current risk today, tomorrow, and Sunday due to this storm's influence. Obviously, it's so far away, but waves churn a lot when a big hurricane like this is relatively close. So even though we're not expecting much in the way of any sort of rain or wind, the seas are going to be rough. So if you are heading to the beaches, which I don't blame you this weekend, the weather's going to be great, please understand the rip current risk will be on the high side.
And you saw the cone of uncertainty in Alex's forecast. That's the area forecasters believe the center of the storm will be in, but it's not a guarantee. Meteorologist David Boyd takes a closer look at the cone.
Well, it starts with forecast points from the National Hurricane Center out to 120 hours or 5 days. Then the average error from the past 5 years is drawn in a circle around it. The average error out 1 day is 41 miles. By day 5, it goes up to 220 miles. Then the cone is drawn around those circles. But keep in mind, the cone is just where it's most likely for the center to go. So in an ideal situation, it would go down the center of the cone, but it's possible that it could go down the east side of the cone or the west side of the cone. So it's always important to be prepared for possible impacts outside of the forecast cone. For the National Weather Desk, I'm meteorologist David Boyd.
There is a risk of severe storms today in parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Tulsa, Wichita, and Fayetteville area are among the cities that could see severe thunderstorms and very large hail late this afternoon into this evening. Major cities also like Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis face a slightly lower risk today, so everyone should be weather aware as well. And the heat is still going strong in the South. More than 41 million people face heat alerts. There are excessive heat warnings for cities like Dallas and Little Rock, where the temperatures will once again be in the triple digits. Now, the U.S. Drought Monitor released this weekly update yesterday, and it shows Tropical Storm Debbie had a big impact on dry conditions along the East Coast. Meteorologist Steve Rudden has details.
The remnants from what was once Debbie has had a big impact on the drought across the mid-Atlantic. Check out the latest drought monitor forecast. It just came in. Now, most of the D.C. metro area under just a dry to a moderate risk. However, part of West Virginia under an extreme risk. But the area that you see in red, a lot smaller than it was last week because of the heavy rain across the mid-Atlantic. Now, drought conditions still remain across Tennessee and North Georgia, but head off toward the southwest. Southwest Texas, that's where we have extreme, even exceptional drought conditions out there. And then farther to the north and west across parts of Washington state into western Montana, that's where the drought does continue. Now, in terms of when we'll see some wet weather, there's a little bit for the Pacific Northwest on the way from now until Tuesday of next week. Hardly anything at all for the severe drought down across Texas. And for the mid-Atlantic, especially up into Pennsylvania, could be looking at a good 1.5 to 2 inches of rain. In Washington, D.C., I'm meteorologist Steve Rudin from WJLA.
Now that is something. Imagine seeing this right here. Water leaking from a window into your home, then it gives way into a full-on waterfall. You're looking at it right here. That's exactly what apparently happened to a family in Utah Tuesday. Whitney Redd, who shared this heart-stopping video with our station in Salt Lake City, explains what happened.
Whitney Redd and her family were on their porch
Watching the hailstorm, and then it just got pretty bad pretty fast. It kind of looked like a river was going down our driveway.
She started filming for insurance purposes because just a month ago, they dealt with a sewage flood in their mother-in-law apartment at the back of their home.
Then we had a corner that I was able to step around. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just continue filming, thinking it would just maybe be like crack and like drizzle in. And then the explosion happened.
Whitney's first thoughts were the kids okay?
Wow, it was just way bigger than I ever imagined it to be. We were just at Niagara Falls, and it legit looks like Niagara Falls.
Hail also gushed in with the floodwaters.
I mean, wood floors were floating, glass was everywhere.
Whitney says luckily her neighbors jumped in to help, and in a few hours, all the flooring was ripped out and fans were going.
A lot of families that got impacted. I just happened to get mine on video.
Pretty incredible video there. Whitney tells our station she is still waiting to hear if insurance will cover the damage and that she is grateful to her neighbors for helping out. Golf ball sized hail fell in Rhode Island yesterday afternoon and evening. The storms also brought gusty winds and flooding to parts of the region as well. While there were some crashes on the roads and some fallen tree branches as well, there are no reports of any serious damage. Now, tomorrow marks 3 years since the remnants of Tropical Storm Fred swamped parts of North Carolina. The storm killed multiple campers in a campground. Rex Hodge checks in with some folks who are still feeling those impacts today.
I still cry.
For Sherry MacArthur, it's almost like Fred's floodwaters camped out at her Laurel Bank campground August 17th, 2021. It swept campers away, and 4 of her people living in them. 2 others living nearby also died. She had to move to a family home down the road a bit. Months and years passed. Debris piles piled up, now mostly removed, with only remnants of life that used to be here. But emotions remain.
I don't hide as much as I used to. Depression has been bad.
I'm 6 feet tall. To give you an idea of how high the water got 3 years ago, all you need to do is look at the bark line on that tree. Steve Eubanks and Dale Robertson had camped part of the year at Laurel Bank.
Just everything we had was gone. We couldn't identify one thing. He took it right off the foundation.
Friends of ours that also live in the campground said, don't come back. Everything's gone.
Both are now set up at an adjacent campground. Laurel Bank now essentially an empty lot. MacArthur unable to reopen it as a campground.
They would not give me any permits.
MacArthur sees improvements since Fred 3 years ago.
There were no warning.
But now she says a new river gauge just went up over the Pigeon River.
We'll have some type of a noise alarm for, the river's getting up.
She'll take the positives as they come, day by day.
Maybe I'm getting better.
Well, answering the question, what time is it? It's fairly easy right here on Earth, but it's not on the moon. There is no standard time there. An international group of astronomers is joining calls to give the moon its own standard clock. Now, the idea is that it will make it easier for future space missions to keep track of time, but it would likely be very different than clocks here, of course, on Earth. One day on the moon lasts around 29.5 Earth days. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, the rare serpent fish that shocked swimmers along a popular California beach, and how a crew of 6 remarkably survived a boat fire 100 miles out to sea.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. We have a wide range in temperatures on the way in the Northeast today. Parts of the Northeast will make into the upper 80s to near 90 degrees, especially in New York here. A good chunk of New England will stay in the 70s and low 80s. The low clouds and fog, they're going to be stubborn for at least parts of New England, but that's going to burn off to at least some sun. There may be an isolated shower. More clouds move in on Saturday. Notice those showers. There may even be a rumble of thunder going into the first part of the weekend.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. We're going to be tracking rain and thunderstorms for your weekend late through Friday night into Saturdays, where we'll likely see the rain chances going up, especially Saturday afternoon and evening, where we'll likely see the most chance for showers and thunderstorms across the entire Mid-Atlantic. Now, temperatures are going to be in the mid to upper 80s, near 90 degrees, with the exception of the high altitudes. As the rain comes in, it'll cool things down, but still mid-80s for Saturday.
Good Friday morning. Meteorologist Michael Ehrenberg with a look at your southeast regional forecast for this Friday. It looks like a frontal boundary will bring showers and storms working their way through sections of Kentucky into Tennessee and North Carolina and northern Georgia during the afternoon, evening hours. Other than that, most of the southeast will be fairly quiet with drier air and isolated showers in Louisiana, and then a few down across far south and central Florida. Forecast high temperatures pretty much in the 90s like you'd expect here in mid to late August. 90 in Nashville, 92 Macon, and 89 in West Palm.
Presented by the National Weather Desk.
An early morning wake-up call in Missouri as lightning strikes the ground near Jefferson City. While the Atlantic coast will see rip currents from Hurricane Ernesto, the Gulf Coast in Panama City is as flat as a pancake. A manatee made a quick visit to a Pensacola, Florida beach. And sunset turned the skies over a lake near Albany, New York, lavender last night.
For more content like this, follow the National Weather Desk on TikTok.
It's been over a week since Debbie made landfall, but many parts of the southeast are still underwater. First Street Foundation did a post-storm analysis on Debbie's flooding, and as meteorologist Emily Gracie found out, the hardest hit areas were not the ones that was actually in flood zones.
But overall, the thing that we took away from the event was that there were a number of properties that were impacted, but about 78% of those properties that were impacted fell outside of FEMA's special flood hazard area. And we know there's a few reasons for that. FEMA zones aren't designed to capture pluvial events and heavy rainfall events. And Debbie was really a perfect example of the type of flooding that come from those types of events that oftentimes aren't captured by those flood zones.
Okay, so explain to me, like, for people who don't fully understand how FEMA flood maps work, because it's confusing. What does it mean? Like, when you live in a flood zone, does that mean you have to have flood insurance? And then if you don't live in a flood zone, you don't have to have insurance? What's the purpose of them?
Through the development of those zones, the NFIP requires that any property that has a federally backed mortgage is required to have flood insurance if they fall within a FEMA flood zone. I think the problem that we've run into in our own research, and that FEMA fully acknowledges, because it's not really in their purview to create flood maps this way, is that the flood maps don't capture small waterway flooding, so they don't capture heavy precipitation flooding.
Are there any spots that you noticed in the report that are most vulnerable, that kind of surprise spots that maybe were hit especially hard?
In Georgia, in South Carolina, in North Carolina, especially as you move away from the coast and you start to get into areas that, traditionally we wouldn't think of as areas that flood. Those are precisely the kind of places that we're seeing more intense, more frequent, heavy downpour events, and precisely the kind of places that aren't tracked by FEMA zones. So those areas kind of popped out as areas where we saw a lot of damage, but there wasn't much in the way of NFIP coverage or properties in FEMA zones.
And to hear the longer version of this interview, head over to our YouTube channel. Dr. Porter shares advice on how you can know the flood risk in your neighborhood. Just search the National Weather Desk, and it will be in the interviews playlist. Imagine being at the beach and stumbling upon a massive and also rare sea creature. That's what happened to a group of kayakers and snorkelers in Southern California. Jasmine Ramirez gives us a closer look and shares what experts are saying.
What do you think?
That's long.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's the biggest fish I've ever seen. It looks like an eel.
That's insane.
Beachgoers couldn't believe their eyes.
Oh, it's as long as a surfboard. I could feed me for like a whole 2 months.
This deep sea fish is incredibly rare to find.
That kind of looks like a sea serpent. It's probably what is responsible for historic sea serpent myths.
Scripps Institution of Oceanography says this is only the 20th oarfish to wash up in California since 1901. We covered a story in 1996 when Navy SEALs found a 23-foot oarfish washed up in Coronado.
The fish was that big. How big? It took 15 sailors to hold it.
The mysterious creature can reach up to around 30 feet in length. It's known in some areas of the world as the doomsday fish and has a mythical reputation to predict natural disasters.
They wash up on the beach either before or after, depending on who you talk to, earthquake or major earthquake or a tsunami. And this has been centuries in Japanese mythology and folklore.
Oarfish normally swim around 600 to 3,000 feet down and rarely come up to the surface. Because of their deep water habitat, researchers don't know a lot about the oarfish or why they wash ashore in Southern California. Researchers hope to answer these questions. The oarfish found over the weekend will be studied and saved for future research. It will be kept at Scripps and become part of one of the largest collections of deep sea fish in the world.
We can have it preserved, like these ones here, for people in the future to continue to look at the specimen and continue to ask questions maybe that we aren't thinking about right now that they may be able to answer in the future.
A fire at sea forced the crew of a Portland, Maine fishing vessel to abandon their ship earlier this week. The boat was also carrying a NOAA weather observer. They had just a few minutes, though, to get into that inflatable lifeboat before the fire took over that ship. Brad Rogers has the story.
We stayed until we couldn't stay anymore.
This is the fishing vessel Three Girls, still burning from an early Monday morning fire at sea that forced the captain and crew to quickly abandon ship.
I remember looking at inside the galley and seeing a glow and seeing the fire and looking at the water and being like, this is really happening. And all of a sudden the fire came out on deck.
Crewman Steve Ames credits Captain Rob Roberge for quickly deciding to abandon ship and for getting off a radio message to the Coast Guard telling them their position in the Gulf of Maine.
United States Coast Guard, United States Coast Guard. This is the fishing vessel Three Girls. We are on fire.
He barely had time to make that distress call. The smoke filled the wheelhouse and he couldn't breathe. So what he got out, what people heard, but we knew help was on the way.
The captain, four-man crew, and this observer from NOAA all safely made it onto this life raft. All but the captain were wearing survival suits.
These survival suits, though, dude, I swam for a couple of minutes to get to the raft.
From a distance, they could see the burning boat.
They snap, crackle, and pop. We're all right, waiting on the helicopter.
They were rescued 2 hours later by a Coast Guard cutter out of Portland.
Robbie alive. Did it.
No good, man.
Ames says the quick decisions made by Captain Roberge saved their lives.
If he chose to fight that fire, if we went down in that engine room, it wouldn't have been a happy story like it is right now. No way, no way. A boat fire is not good. That's the worst case scenario. And we just all escaped that. Everyone was alive, nobody hurt. Like, we were happy.
And now let's check to see the weather at state fairs taking place across the country this weekend. Let's start in Louisville, host of the 120th Kentucky State Fair. Among the highlights, the Oak Ridge Boys 50th fair performance. Unfortunately, scattered showers are likely both Saturday and Sunday with highs in the 80s. The Illinois State Fair, which dates back actually to 1853, wraps up this weekend in Springfield. Miranda Lambert performs there tomorrow night, and the weather looks pretty good with partly cloudy skies all weekend and highs in the low 80s. And the 167th Indiana State Fair runs through Sunday in Indianapolis. Gospel singer and also actress Yolanda Adams headlines tomorrow night. It's foggy this morning, but Saturday's weather looks good. Sunday could be wet with showers during the day. And finally, Des Moines is hosting the Iowa State Fair. The single largest event in the state history is first held in 1854. R&B singer Ne-Yo performs tomorrow night, and the weather all weekend should be fantastic with no rain and highs in the low 80s. And time now for a short break, but first we soar over Miami Beach.
Well, a very good Friday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. We've got a few scattered showers and storms across the Midwest today, and the chance of severe weather is fairly low for us. But we do have sunshine. Look at that, Lincoln, Nebraska getting up to about 90 today, mostly sunny. A lot of sunshine across the plains for your Saturday as these showers and storms slowly work their way to the east. And Ohio Valley still dealing with some of the rain on Sunday, while most of the Midwest will be dry with high temperatures in the 80s for a lot of us.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. We're starting off with a very warm morning. Temperatures into the 80s. We'll see 81 for our friends in Brownsville, 82 out into New Orleans. Same story out there for El Paso. A weak system up to the north will keep showers there, but we'll be watching for sea breeze showers down along the Texas coast, but it won't help cool things down. Still going to be a very warm day. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Well, hi there and a good Friday morning to everybody. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, certainly a lot quieter than what we're seeing along the East Coast. We'll see highs close to 80 today in the Rose City of Portland, 112. The heat is still on out of Phoenix, and a perfect 81 in the South Hill District of Spokane. High pressure ruling things over the Four Corners region, watching for this area of low pressure offshore to bring a stormy Saturday to Seattle and Portland. And that's the scene from here.
Watching the National Weather Desk.
And welcome back, everyone. There's been a party in the sky this week. Meteorologist Dave Dirks looks back on the celestial events that took place, including some you may not have even heard about.
It all got started with the peak of the Perseid meteor shower late Sunday night. At the same time, the Northern Lights put on a surprise show as far south as Tennessee and Virginia. Check out these spectacular views. This one right here from High Knob in Wise County. Another view from Chilhowie, and another awesome shot from Jonesville. all 3 in southwest Virginia. And while there was a beautiful sunrise over Jonesboro, Tennessee, the night sky party actually culminated with the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter Wednesday morning. The 2 planets have actually been close together in the eastern sky during August, but made their closest approach prior to sunrise Wednesday morning. Jupiter will now ascend and pull away from Mars pretty quickly. And while the 2 planets appear close in proximity, they're actually more than 300 million miles apart.
And looking for more great weather content, you can find us on all your favorite social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back. And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great day and also a fantastic weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday.